First of all, in today's series, we're going over answering the MCQs, which are multiple choice questions, kind of an overview of answering all of these multiple choice questions, which are kind of predominant on the AP examination. And then we're kind of going over primary versus secondary source documents, baseline tips and best practices, practice multiple choice questions, and then going into the bulk of today's content information, which is the East Coast open-ended Q&A. So Isa, and anybody else focusing on other units that they need help on, any questions you guys have from the AP World History curriculum about our own experiences and things like that, make sure to contact us and talk to us during this session. We can go as long as you guys want, but it's just to highlight some of the issues that you guys are having in your own AP World History curriculum. And the mean that I put down there, 92% of all Fiveable students pass their AP examinations. That's a real statistic. So definitely take advantage of this platform that we have for free here, and use it to your best abilities. View all of our streams. Going to join our streams like this one. You guys are being very, very proactive by doing so here today, and I'm proud of you for doing that. But definitely know that Fiveable is here for you. We got your back for the AP examination. So yeah, we're glad to be able to help you today.
All right, so we're gonna start with an overview of a multiple choice question. Some of you, like especially past viewers, you're probably wondering, like, again, these guys just talked about this past time. That's because we want to drill it to your head, because you know, even after every unit test, there's always a tendency that you want to just move on and like get rid of the past information you had before. So we're throughout these streams, we're just gonna build on and build on and build on and what you know, what you learned in the past. So it's not necessarily gonna be a repeat, but we're just adding on. So this time, we're gonna go over an overview and like what documents are. So we have a mini question here. How much of the AP exam constitutes a multiple choice question? So there will be the first section of the AP World test is a multiple choice. So it's like, you know, if you take the PSAT or the SAT, something like that. This is multiple choice A, B, C, D. So there's gonna be 55 questions and they'll be answered in 55 minutes. And you might be intimidated, like, why wait, 1 minute per question and I read documents? Don't worry. Remember, like you're getting your skills like enhanced throughout the years. So we're building on that skill, being speedy and accurate in your answers. So don't worry about that. So overall, it's going to be 40% of your score in the exam, and usually they come in fours, they come in threes. So we're gonna have an example later on that simulates the exact format, but usually like they usually stem from the actual document. So you know, if you do the math real quick, that's like 10 to 12 or 13 like 13 stimuli or documents, and you know, 3 to 4 questions each for the entire section. So with that in mind, so we want to differentiate between primary and secondary sources here. So primary sources are eyewitness accounts. They are the actual documents made during that specific event. So you know, during the event, let's say you know, the Black Death. Let's say there was this one guy who's dying, or a merchant who's seeing like the world burn, everyone running, everyone, you know, panicking. You know, whoever that guy is, or whoever that author is, he's writing a primary source. So primary source is more reliable because it's what he saw. It's not just like a word of mouth, you know. So you know, if you look at date and you see you know, 1300, and like usually like 1400, 1500, usually it's a primary source document, you know, where people were actually this document was in the perspective of the people who were there during the time. And that's a primary source because it's not derived from anything else. So secondary source documents are interpretations, and they are based on primary sources. So you can see where the secondary comes from, and they're no longer convey the immediacy of document. Basically, they're not necessarily like the opinions or the ideas of the person, whoever was in there during the event. So let's say during World War I, so a soldier talking about the horrors of war would be a primary source, but let's say a political analyst or a historian in 2019 or today, who's analyzing World War I and he's writing an essay on it, that's the secondary source. So you want to know the difference, and you don't want to be that guy, because I mean we had a tip before that when you analyze stimulus-based questions, you can just read the annotation on top, usually the annotation or the background, and then look at the date. Like, you don't want to just look blindly at the date, because you may get thrown up. Let's say the document is talking about the Mongol Empire or the maritime empires during the 15th century, and you see in the bottom it's 1911. You may get thrown up. Wait, that doesn't make sense. So you just want to read it carefully. So um, once again, primary sources are direct from the people or writers during that time. Secondary sources are usually people who analyze the primary sources. So yeah.
Yeah, two great examples are the ones that are on the screen. The Travels of Marco Polo. So Marco Polo actually wrote that document about his own travels. That is the definition of a primary source document. However, a book like his biography, which you guys may know, Who Was Marco Polo? It's basically somebody else writing about Marco Polo's own travels, which is definitely a secondary source document. And the problem with a document like this is contain bias of the the author and like different things that are going on contemporarily that may cloud the judgment of whoever's writing such a book. All right, so answering the multiple choice question, an overview. We're going to be going over some of the main things in today's multiple choice questions that you can really use to kickstart your score, to jumpstart your score on this 55 question section. So first of all, I would say the most important tip that I used last year was, actually I got this here from one of our streamers at Fiveable. It was read the questions first. And so when you're reading an AP examination question with a stimulus and questions, I would really, really recommend reading those 3 to 4 questions and scanning those questions even before you read the actual excerpt or look at the picture itself. Because what it gets you to do is, for example, if it's a very, very direct question that doesn't really require your own stuff from the expert or the picture, you can just answer it right then and there. It saves you so much time. And second of all, when you're looking at the questions before you look at the stimulus, it gives you a roadmap of what to look for. So, for example, if I see a question hitting on a certain topic, I can go back to the excerpt, and instead of reading the excerpt like 3 or 4 times, I can just look at it and be able to streamline my vision and find it as soon as I look at the document. That's the real beauty here with reading the questions first. And second of all, use the process of elimination. I've been using the process of elimination ever since I was in 5th grade. Great, great, great strategy to limit your answers and narrow down your answers. So you can just narrow down blatantly incorrect answers, and just like from a physical point of view, a visual point of view, you can look at these answers and be like, hey, it's not 4 answers I'm looking at 3 answers. And doing it physically just gives you a much, much more simplistic visual aid. Third of all, take heed to the wording, and take heed to the wording when considering multiple choice questions, the questions themselves, and also the textual stimulus of the answers. So, for example, if one of the questions says, which of the following sources does not represent the continuities during this period? Many people miss the word not, and not missing that word costs you the whole question. And I would say it's very, very important to scan the questions and to scan them well, and also take heed to the wording. For example, if an author himself lists multiple sources, take heed to how he's using these different items, how he's describing these different items, and read the excerpt slowly but swiftly. Like, don't spend too much time, but also don't just skim over it. You need to look at it very, very deeply. And fourth of all, contextualize information. When you have different stimulus-based questions, it's often easy to look at them and to not contextualize them. And what I mean by that is, for example, if I get a question on the Mughal Empire, I'm going to have to contextualize the Mughal Empire to exactly everything that was occurring during that period, and how trade was bolstered during that period, how cultural innovations were bolstered during that period, how cultural infusion was really kickstarted during that period. So I would just use my own past memories to really help me in answering those questions, especially when it's regarding Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4. I'm going to just connect it back to what I know about those units and to really get the most from what the stimulus is saying. Any idea?
Yeah, for number 3, take you the wording. Once again, there's a difference between skimming and scanning. In scan, when you scan, you look for the keywords like Varun said, not, or best described, something like related to that. Like it's not really spending a lot of time, but at the same time, you know what to do. We know what to look for. But when you skim, it's you basically try. It's like for me, it's like a mindset that's like you're just trying to like get it over with. So or or like you read the question and you go back and you go back to the excerpt and you go back to the question. It's like it's not like a word search thing. It's not like a scavenger hunt. You want to know what the question is asking. You want to know what to look for. And then for number 4, contextualization. That is a very great point. Like this is the reason why your teachers would probably tell you you don't need to memorize all of them. You need to know the general chain of events that are happening. You want to know the general events. So like that, let's say once again going back to the example, like 13th century, the Mongol Empire. There was the Mongol Empire. There were like empires in the east. There were empires in the west. You don't have to memorize like every single detail. This is where it goes back. Like you may, because at the end of the day, you may know who Genghis Khan is, but you don't know his role or like what he did. You just know that he is like like your monotone saying like, oh yeah, he's a leader of the Mongol Empire. So you want to know like the big picture ideas. This is where it all ties in, because you want to think critically when you analyze even documents in multiple choice questions. So yeah.
Thank you, Jed. And then here's multiple choice question.
Okay, so we have an example here. So we have an image here. So once again, stimulus-based multiple choice questions come in sets of 3s and 4s. So I'll point in the map first. So you see that there's a cross there. I'm not gonna give away what it is, what it represents. So there's a cross there. There's a moon there. So there's symbols. So they're representing something. You also see some pathways for like in the ocean. See they're also representing something. So you see a boat and you see 2 different boats. So number 1 is, which of the following was one way in which maritime trade routes were different from land-based trade routes? So I'll read the choices. A, maritime routes heavily supported the transfusion of heavy items placed in bulk. B, maritime routes heavily supported the transfusion of valuable items. C, maritime trade routes tended not to benefit from the outpour of new technologies. Or D, maritime trade routes tended not to be supported by regional governments. So you guys can already start and like put your answers in the comments, but I'll go over like some challenging terms, because I know for sure as a past AP student that some challenging terms are usually like the deal breakers. Like for me at least, I tended to like if there's an option that was like a heavy term, like I don't know, egalitarianism or like any term, like I was usually like it's not the right answer, but that's usually not the case. So transfusion is basically another word for transfer. So yeah, so if you guys want to start answering in the comments, sounds good. All right, yes, you said A. Anyone else? All right, yes, I think it's also A. So yep, Ad says A. So before I go over the right answer, you might notice that this question is asking what's the difference between land. Basically, it's asking what's the difference between maritime, basically water trade routes, and land-based trade routes. So it's an AP skill. It's a compare and contrast. So you want to like keep that in mind. Like you're comparing things. That's like it's not only in the LEQs or DBQs. It's also like a skill that's being developed in multiple choice questions. So last call, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good job, guys. Good job, Yessie, Sunny, and Ad. The answer is A. So maritime routes heavily supported transfusion of heavy items placed in bulk. So what I did here, I would usually go like process elimination, and like I would start at the bottom personally. So it said for D, it tended not to be supported by regional governments. That doesn't make sense, because usually governments also played a role in trade routes, because they also get profit from it basically. So that doesn't make sense at all. So you can like cross it out. Moving my way up. So maritime trade routes tended not to benefit from the output of new technologies. No, they did. So, the compass or the astrolabe. In fact, trade routes like were the primary like channels where like these technologies spread. So usually not all the time, but usually like the ones that are negative, let's say like you can like weed them out, especially if they're asking about developments in trade networks. So B, maritime routes heavily supported the transfusion of valuable items. So you might, that kind of makes sense. But you look at it like the wording, valuable is more of a generic term. Like I think land-based trade routes also support the transfusion of valuable items. So that doesn't really like make a distinction between the two. So you can say it's a maybe. Okay, let's go.
Land-based trade routes supported valuable goods transfusion even more than maritime-based trade routes because like you couldn't carry as much goods on the land as you could in the water, especially with these big ships. So like that's just one thing to know about maritime and land-based trade routes.
Yeah, fun fact there. And then going finally at A, so maritime routes heavily supported the transfusion of heavy items placed in bulk. So that's what just Varun said, you know. Land-based trade routes, they didn't have cars back then. They didn't have wagons back then. Probably older versions of it, but like you know, even in boats, you can pack a lot of things. Like you can pack like a huge variety of things. While in land trade routes, you usually have camels and horses and you know animals like that, and they can't really drag an entire they can't really like because they didn't have once again they didn't have very advanced like cars or wagons like we have today, so you can't just drag the entire package deal of products. So you know, if it looks like the best answer, so it's A. All right. Um, all right, number 2. So, which of the following Chinese innovations most stimulated trade from 600 to 1450 CE? So this is like it's more of a unit 0 question, but if you get this right, it's like extra credit for you. So, is it A, gunpowder, B, the astrolabe, C, lateen sails, or D, the magnetic compass? Put the answers in the comments. All right, yes, he says D. I think. Hey, you're guessing. You're thinking critically. Sunny says D. All right, I'll speed this up real quick. So any more answers? 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, Sunny's like, oh dear, C. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'll give the answer as I go. So I'll do process elimination again just in case. Usually it's the safest approach. So what's between B and D? Yeah. So A, gunpowder. Usually when you talk about trade and you see like maps and like if you haven't figured out these blue lines are trade routes. So usually they're talking about more of a navigational technology. So sure, trade came with like some sort of warfare, but not all the time. So you can weed out gunpowder that's an X. So um, actually, this is a very challenging question because it requires like quite a bit of historical knowledge. So, once again, it's a bonus question for you guys. So, B, the astrolabe. So, the astrolabe. Actually, I'll go over the 3 of them. The astrolabe, lateen sails, and the magnetic compass are all like they're all like navigational technologies. But the thing is, now you want to pick which one is the best one. So, lateen sails actually like originated like it's more of way back, not in like the beginning of like this like 600s, yeah, something like that. So it began during that period, and while it did stimulate trade, like eventually everyone had Latin sales. So it's more of a navigation, not more navigation, but like directional. So like you know like you have these like wind sails and like the wind blows and that the sail and you know it goes whatever direction you want it to go. So you can argue that but that's not necessarily the best one. It gave like some traders like the Chinese an edge over the others. So
And it was also produced in Europe, not China. So like,
oh
doesn't
okay.
really, yeah.
That's so that yeah. Once again, you need like some historical knowledge. So some questions are like this. So like me like now. So um, and then we have the astrolabe. So mind if you help me enlighten what the astrolabe is?
So astrolabe is almost like a compass, except like it just tells you direction. But the problem with the astrolabe is it was made in Persia, the Middle East. So neither the Latin sail nor the astrolabe would be a correct answer in this scenario. And if you do have any background about where China was doing, what China was doing during this period, you know it wasn't the astrolabe or Latin sail.
Yeah, so honestly, like if I would be taking the test right now, like I usually go with, like, in this case, I would have gone with the fanciest answer, which is like the magnetic compass, because it compared to a regular compass like the astrolabe, it did more than just telling the direction. So like Varun said, so the answer would be D. So good job, you guys. All right. All right, last question. Which of the following was not a trading ship? So remember wording, not a trading ship used along the Indian Ocean trade route. Is it the Chinese junk, the Arabian dhow, the European caravel, or the European galleass?
And there's
Again.
ship on the map, so you can refer to that.
Oh yeah, yeah. All right, Issa said, I don't know, I think that was an earlier question. So Ad said C or D. Sunny said D. Any other answers? Having studied. Hey, that's another good thing. So when you usually the only problem with multiple choice question is there's some answers that are really trippy that you usually can like kick out two obviously wrong answers, but it usually comes to like the last two. And you don't have to like it's not worth to like spend 5 minutes thinking about which one's right or wrong, and then you realize later on that you got it wrong. So just pick a guess. You have a 50% chance of getting it right already, so that's good. All right. So I got a couple of C's or D's. So the right answer is D. So the European galleass. So I think I mean Varun is more familiar with this. So is this like a more of a like a land technology thing?
The galleass is a ship, but it's a military ship, and they didn't learn
Oh
about that this
yeah, okay.
year. So we did learn about what you're going to base your knowledge off of on this question is like what you did learn about, and maybe your teacher didn't go over the European caravel, but they're bound to have because the caravel was like a transformational technology during the age of exploration and things like that.
But yeah, I mean you can already narrow down the Chinese junk and Arabian dhow because they're two types of ships. So like they're the ones like portrayed in the map below. But like, once again, like sometimes there are some terms that are really specific, but usually College Board is more a little sometimes a little bit lenient, you know. Hopefully. So so
Yeah,
good
some
job, guys.
questions are like this, and they like ask you for actual information that doesn't come from the stimulus, but some of them, like number one, do come from the stimulus, and they're a little bit more broad. On number three, though, definitely base it off your own knowledge. The caravel, if you don't know, was a ship that used the lateen sail, which is another European technology, and it was just like a swift ship that was great for commerce and things like that. Know that about the caravel. The Dow and junk were basically very similar, except they were a little bit bigger and they were more suited for the monsoon winds. But yeah, all three of the first options you should remember for your later studies in AP World History Modern. And the galleass we didn't really go over. You'll never really go over for that one, but yeah, that's the one that kind of stands out here. All right, so another SBMC practice question. So you see this image on the very left. They're called counting houses from Genoa, Italy, in the late 14th century from Treatise on the Visas. The bills of exchange used by Genoese bankers, such as those pictured on the right, were most similar to which of the following Chinese innovations? Answer it in the comment section. I'll look at them when y'all are all done. So yeah, scan the picture and then answer the question based on it. All right, Ad said A. Sunny's also chiming in with A.
So yeah, this is one of usually the questions that come from the stimulus, the first few, you know, and like you have to look at the picture, like you don't have a choice, even if you don't want
Yeah.
to. So
Yeah, and that's the funny thing with AP World History. Some of the questions, like, they don't even relate to the stimulus, and then like the stimulus is more for background. What's up? All right. Yeah. So as Mr. Beckman's saying, typically the first two questions depend on the stimulus, and the third one may be just like based on prior knowledge and how you connect it with the stimulus. So yeah, that's basically how it is with the exam usually. All right, so actually you guys are both right. So the bills of exchange used by Genoese bankers are, we're talking about banking houses right here. The Grand Canal was actually developed by the Sui dynasty. Okay, by the Sui dynasty, and the Sui dynasty produced the Grand Canal as a way of communicating commerce and trading things along the Chinese Empire. The magnetic compass that wasn't really It's something they use to bank. As we're talking about banking houses, counting houses, they used to make that magnetic compass during commerce because it was more of like something where you transported goods, but not in the exchange of goods in terms of like banking and things like that. And also scholar bureaucrats. So like scholar bureaucrats aren't a Chinese innovation. Scholar bureaucrats are just like they're people who are just kind of like a Chinese Confucian scholar gentry, but they weren't an innovation. There was people who were kind of universally used across the world. But I think beyond any doubt, flying cars is the best option in this multiple choice question because talking about counting houses, flying cash was kind of a type of money lending, a type of cash that you could, like certificates where you could kind of get rid of a certificate and get something out of it, kind of like checks in today's world. So these bills of exchange were also like checks. If you know anything about bills of exchange, as you can see in this image, they were transporting them, giving money for these bills of exchange so that they could use them on a more broad scale. So definitely know the difference between these Grand Canal, these compasses, these bureaucrats, as compared to like banking houses and flying cash. And if you look closely at the image, it really portrays the transfer of money in this specific scenario. And I'm going to go to the next question here, as we can see. All right, sorry about that. I was kind of exited out the window. All right. So yeah, that one's definitely flying cash. If you have any questions about what flying cash is, what flying cash was doing during this period, definitely talk to us about that. Mr. Beckman brought up the others don't necessarily need the stimulus, as I said. Yeah, so stimulus is used in most scenarios, but in some scenarios, you don't really use the stimulus, especially near the end of the test. I've seen them kind of stray away from the stimulus. So that's one of the things that I want you guys to look out for.
All right, so this is the document. We've done images, but multiple choices also include a document. So we're gonna have a question later on, but I'll read it out loud. Remember how I mentioned there's always like a mini summary at the beginning. So it's the one in bold. So we're talking about Leo Africanus, originally a Spanish Muslim traveler in Africa, and he's later Italian Christian, and he wrote a survey of Africa in 1526. So a survey, it's not like what you know today, like are you left-handed, right-handed? It's more of survey, like you're surveying the land. You're exploring the land and trying to find like the dimensions, like how wide it is and how far it is. So he did a survey of Africa in 1526, including this section in Timbuktu, which is in West Africa. So only small, poor horses are born in this country. The merchants use them for their voyages, and the courtiers to move out the city. But the good horses come from Barbary, North Africa. They arrive in a caravan, and 10 or 12 days later, 10 or 12 days later, they're led to the ruler, who takes as many as he likes and pays appropriately for them. So they talk about like trade and then like a caravan, like traveling around with merchants traveling around with horses, and they're going to the ruler. So there are in Timbuktu numerous judges, teachers, and priests, all properly appointed by the king. He greatly honors learning. Many handwritten books imported from Barbary are also sold. There's more profit made from this commerce than from all other merchandise. Instead of coin money, pure gold nuggets are used, and for small purchases, cowrie shells, which have been carried from Persia, and of which 400 equal a ducat. 6 2/3 of a ducat equals 1 Roman gold ounce. So they talk about more in commerce here, like they're not using cash like we know today. They're using gold nuggets, like what a flexor. So we also see we have to see specialized jobs like judges, teachers, and priests, all appointed by the king. So this king loves learning, and he loves books from Barbary. So those are some things you want to like point out as you read. You don't want to just go skim, like, oh, there's a horse. Oh, there's shells. So that's a section, and we have a question after this. So.
The first thing that should come to your mind is primary source documents.
Yes, 1526. So it's a traveler. So it's not like some historian today who analyzed his records. It's the OG dude who it's actually the guy talking about his journey. So So talking about historians, a historian could best use the excerpt from Leo Africanus to illustrate which of the following. Is it A, continued importance of trans-Saharan trade networks after 1500? Is it B, the Songhai Emperor's use of Islam to create legitimacy for their rule? Is it C, military conflict between Songhai and Morocco? Or D, declining significance of land trade in the period after 1500? So comments down on the right, as usual, or below if you're using it, take your phone.
I think if you don't want to go over both questions, I can go back to the previous screen so you guys can see where this actually is located. So here, I'm going to pull it up here for a few minutes because that actually might help them. For example, I'm looking at the questions and going back and finding the information.
Yeah. So yeah, which of the following like big picture ideas like is the excerpt talking about? So is it trade networks? Is it Islam to like create legitimacy? Is it military conflict like war? Or is it like the land trade failing, after 1500? So answers in the chat, A, B, C, or D.
Yep, and I can go back to it so you guys can look at it.
Or if you don't remember, just like shout out the general idea. Like is it war or trade or
Yeah.
Or okay, ad said trade. Anyone else?
Mr. Beckman said in questions like these, the choices are often all things that happened. So yeah, I mean, in questions like this, they always have very, very similar answers and equally correct answers, except one of them is oftentimes more relevant and more correct per se than the other answer. So look for the best case answer in both scenarios. So yeah, the second question is, which of the following features of West Africa contributed to the situation described in the second paragraph? I can go back to that for you guys.
Which following features? Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Sorry. So before we go, I'll go over the first question first. Like, yes, you guys are right. It was the continuing importance of trans-Saharan trade networks out of 1500. So usually in these questions, they're asking big picture ideas, right? So you want to look here. Like, remember how I summarized it real quick? So you see, yeah, you're right. Good job, Ad. You see merchants, you see caravans, you see cowrie shells and gold nuggets. You see profit. You see like they're, I mean, modern lingo, like they're chilling out. They're not really. So you can already cross out the they're in military conflict. No, they're not. You can see they're just exchanging. They're just this guy's just talking about like merchandise, like commerce. So you can take out the war response. You can talk about you can take out the declining importance of the trade route. Because you can see here, business is booming. It's peak trade hours, so it's not, they're not really like running out of business anytime soon. So you can take it out too. And here you can also take out their use of religious like is Islam to like political legitimacy. Because do you ever see evidence for Islam or religious legitimacy? No. Like usually in big picture questions, like they usually throw off, like they throw at you, like they're trying to trick you, like they throw you off of these like ideas. But like at the end of the day, like look for the one that's like has the most evidence in the documents, So here you can see trade, which in this case is trade. So good job, guys. So second question, I see Sunny was ahead earlier, but like which of the following features of West Africa contributed to the situation described in the second paragraph? So it was the one where they're talking about like exchanging cowrie shells and like the gold nuggets. So was it wealth generated from trade, powerful land empires, matrilineal systems of inheritance, connections with Islamic societies? So I'll give you like a minute or half a minute. So
yeah, I'll go back to that one for you guys too.
Yeah, Sunny already said A, so
Mm-hmm.
if you guys want to guess.
Go ahead.
So focus on the second paragraph. Is it focusing on trade, religious conflict? Yeah, but like just shout out. If you don't remember the letter, just shout out the idea. Was it a matriarchal society or like dominated by women?
Yeah, so really think about if it's describing the wealth or the land empires, connections with other Islamic societies, matrilineal systems of inheritance. Just look at all these things and kind of determine what it's characterizing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Sunny said good job. Sunny said it was A because it's talking about transparent for the first question. But yes, you want to point out this is the difference between once again scanning and skimming. If you're skimming, you want to realize all of these. You just go like, oh, 1526 and merchants and like gold. But when you're scanning, you're actually looking at the key ideas, the key details. So you guys are nailing it so far. So all right, so I seen no more answers. I think people already answered enough. So let's go over number 2. So the right answer is A. So once again, it's well generated from trade. So once again, gold usually symbolizes wealth and riches, and you can powerful led empires. You can say that because an empire wouldn't be powerful at all to stimulate trade if it wasn't that formidable in the first place. But once again, we're looking at the best answer. So you can see more trade than like the Shanghai Kingdom flexing its good old empire status. So it's not B. C, they don't even mention matrilineal systems or like women inheriting the money or just inheritance in general. They don't mention that, so that's just out of the question. And D, connections with Islamic societies. You can say that there is trade, so it makes sense. But once again, one, we're looking for the best answer, and two, they don't really mention any outside empires here. So whoever answered A, good job, guys.
Yeah, and they don't mention many Islamic societies, but they do mention, if you go back, connections with Persia and Rome. So if it did say like connections with societies, I would probably put that answer. But now that it said Islamic societies,
Yeah,
I don't think so. There's also one sentence which has like a big hit for number 2. Can anybody find that sentence in the second paragraph? It basically says exactly what the excerpt wants.
yeah.
It's in the very middle. All right, so I'll go ahead and give it out. There is more profit made from this commerce than from any other merchandise. And if you go back to the question, the first choice is wealth generated from trade. So when it's saying there's more money generated from this kind of trade than any other commerce, then yeah, I mean, definitely put an A, because that basically gives the whole thing away from the second paragraph. It just shows you how much they're focusing on wealth during this period and in this question itself. But yeah, great job, you guys, and especially those of us who got both answers for A. All right, so that ends our multiple choice questions kind of lay down here today, and we're going to go into East Coast open-ended Q&A. During this Q&A, you guys can ask us anything about our own experiences in AP World History. As AP World History students, you can ask us about any content-based questions during periods 2, 3, 4, 1, anything like that. So definitely go over any of this content you guys want us to describe during today's session. And yeah, go ahead, just shoot with us and answer in the polls, answer in the question bar, and just answer in the comment section.
I mean, yeah, you can just ask a question. You can just throw a random topic and we can just ramble about it, Just don't be shy, guys. I mean, we got this right here.
And usually we get popular questions about our own experiences, and how we studied for the AP exam. So don't feel free to contact us, ask us about those questions, and just, shoot your questions.
Yeah.
Beckman said questions can be about classwork or particular content. You guys again can ask us questions from any unit period, any questions about unit 2 if you want. I know you were having some trouble, you guys, so make sure to get it resolved here. Okay, so as said, I'm going to add that to the question bar. Real quick. All right. So what are some good study habits and skills that you suggest? Me personally, I just suggest for AP World History not to be slacking. And that means in class and outside of class. In class, you don't want to be slacking whatsoever. You need to be prepared and engaged during every lecture. And that means answer and ask as many questions as possible. So when your teacher asks a question for you during class, I mean, always raise your hand every single time. Try to answer the question every single time. And that's the best study skill that I used last year, and that really helped me in AP World History. Some other skills that I suggest are to take notes, take effective notes on the lectures. Tomorrow we did a stream about taking effective lecture notes, and a few weeks later we'll do another stream on lecture notes, so feel free to tune in for that one. And also make sure to ask your teacher any question that you have. Don't be shy to ask questions. Your teachers love you asking questions, and that's very important. Another study habit that I use even to this day is to spend 1 hour for that subject content area every single day. Just review all of my notes, review all of my study notes, all my study materials for that every day, and just focus on that. Also, I recommend using third-party resources because lectures aren't going to cut it. Classwork isn't going to cut it. I would just recommend using ABSCO, using Fiveable, using Heimler's History on YouTube, even using any blogs that you guys have. So definitely focus upon using all the resources you guys can get, and I can go on about that as well.
Yeah. You don't have to like wait until the next day and your teacher starts talking about the next topic. You can always like enrich your learning just by learning by yourself. You can watch crash course world history videos or like video series or Khan Academy even, or like Fiveable streams, or just any like summaries online. Especially if you're a visual person, if you're a video person, just don't wait for the teacher. Don't rely on what the teacher what your teacher teaches you in class. Part of it's more like reading. Part of your learning is on reading. So if you don't really like your textbook or any even review books, like if you don't want them, if you're not a fan of reading, you can just watch videos online. And that goes again, good point by Varun. Don't slack off. I mean, realistically, at some point we just slack off, but you can be 1 day behind or a day. 2 days is dangerous. So, nah, you sure you want to go there? But if you're a week behind, that's a real issue. You don't want to be there. So usually what I do is when I get home, because our tendency is once we get home we slack off for a while, and not slack off, but we just relax, watch some Netflix or listen to music, and then start working, realize, oh, I have work to do, and it's later on, it's 10 p.m. That's a usual tendency. I mean, no shame here. So what I would do is instead is I would get rid of distractions, turn off your phone, or get out of that PC. So and just work away until you're burnt out. At least you get part of your homework done, because usually people are once again, we're always available in intercom or software. You can chat us. What I see is that most people are stressed with the workload. They don't have time for the whatever. They have a lot of things to juggle. They don't have time for homework or studying. So even if taking out those distractions that don't necessarily eliminate all the busyness you have, all the your fatigue, you'll be surprised at how much time you're already saving if you're not using that phone for Instagram or Snapchat. So
yeah, and also one thing I recommend is just completely shutting off your phone, or just putting it in some place you won't use it. Because for me personally, using my phone is something that really distracts me, and I just shut down my phone completely until my homework's done. And also, as I put up here for you guys, one of our past streams about study skills, definitely supplement your reading with in-class notes and online resources. Some of the best ones that I found are Steve Heimler's History YouTube channel, and then Adam Norris's YouTube channel on AP World History, our Fiveable channel, and also Freeman PDF. So all four of these sources are updated for the AP World History modern curriculum, and they're all very, very great resources. I also personally recommend using different things. One of the best textbooks that I've used for AP World for in-class learning or AMSCO. I've used Barron's, and I think those are both great books to use during class. And Princeton Review is also a great book to use during the end of the year. So I really suggest using these books because in-class lectures really make up a very, very small amount of the in-class of the learning spectrum that I've labeled here, and assigned reading makes a lot of it. So definitely use third-party resources. All right.
Hope it helps. So.
Yep. And if that wasn't clear enough, then definitely, contact us with another question.
So if you guys have many more questions.
Any questions at all?
Yeah, there's always that one empire you don't even know what it is, or any social any big picture questions, or just content, or you want to know who that one guy is, one historical figure is. You forgot who he is. Okay, wait. Can you review Gunpowder Empire? So I have a quiz tomorrow. So okay, so First thing, from like a big picture, so gunpowder empires refer to don't overcomplicate things. So gunpowder empires are basically the three empires, like usually in like Central Asia, like not Central, like Middle Eastern region, that managed to like utilize gunpowder technology. It did originate in China, but they were able to utilize it to like advance technology and like firearms, weapons. So, you see, remember three big names. So one is it's the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East. There's a Safavid Empire in was it India?
And
No.
then Safavids are in
Actually,
also
no,
the
no,
Middle East.
no. I'm talking about the sorry.
The
The
Mughals are
Safavid
in India.
Empire was in Persia, and the Mughal Empire was in India. So you can tell that they're kind of spread out. They're kind of like one of them is India, one is in Persia, and one of them is in the middle, in more like Mediterranean. So you can tell that the one in the Mediterranean and the one in the Middle East, in Persia, Iran, modern day Iran, they're kind of in like fighting with each other. So it's the Ottomans and the Safavids. So once again, Ottomans, Middle East, like Mediterranean. Safavids are in
Persia.
Iran, Persia. So one thing that you should know about them is that the Ottomans are Sunni Islams. I think Sunni Islams, and the Safavids are Shia Islams.
Mhm.
So you can already tell that they already have like they're not only conflicting, not only political, but also in like religious differences. So that's another major like difference between the two. So that ties back to like the if you don't know the original debate, like that ties back to when Muhammad established Islam, and then when he died, people were arguing who's going to be the next successor. So one group believes that it should be direct descendants. So it's the Safavid Empire right now. So it's the Shia,
Mhm.
the Safavids. So they believe that it should be direct descendants. So you had to be like a grandson or a son, or like a kid of the original like of Muhammad. While the Sunnis believe that it should be like anyone who deserves it, so like based on merit. So like if you're a good leader, and I mean Muhammad noticed your like your potential as a leader, you can be the next leader. So it doesn't have to be like restricted to families. So you can tell that the Safavids, the Shias are more fundamentalists. So they're more like they stick more to their traditions. Like you had to be a blood relative to become the
Mhm.
next like leader. While the Ottomans are more I wouldn't say liberal, but they're more like more lenient compared to, at least compared to Safavids, where they're more like as long as he's a cool leader, he's good, he's really formidable as a leader, like he's in, you know. So yeah, and then the Mughals were just I don't really remember much, but I think Varun can add more on that. So
Yeah, so the Mughal Empire was basically an empire that took over the Delhi Sultanate over India, and they were a Muslim empire, and they just were like really, really, really. They first of all they were a minority population because in India the Hindus was a majority religion there. So when Mughal commanders who were Indian also came over, they established a system of mass toleration. So they were very, very tolerant of the Hindu people in the Mughal Empire in India, and that's how they achieved success. They didn't really coerce the people during the early days of the Mughal Empire, though they did conquer the region through gunpowder, through technology, just like many of these Safavid Empire, Ottoman Empire. They were Sunni Islam, but also during the period of Akbar, they were very, very culturally tolerant, and also they diffused a lot of culture and architecture and all these kinds of things. Just know they were very, very tolerant and very, very successful during their reign with diffusion, with architecture and things like that. This kind of fell apart during the reign of I forget what his name was. I don't remember, but it was one of the later empires after Shah Jahan. But yeah, I felt
Aurangzeb.
like they started Aurangzeb. That's who it is. So Aurangzeb was the emperor who started breaking up the empire because he was less religiously tolerant. He was actually discriminative of the Shia Muslims and also of the Indians, of the Hindu Indians. So they really pushed Islam onto people, and they didn't like that. So when we have a minority ruling a majority, and the minority is not tolerant, it doesn't go good. So when Aurangzeb
Yeah.
ended, the Mughal Empire ended, basically. But yeah, it was a great big empire.
So yeah, all you need to remember when the Mughals is that it took over the Delhi Sultanate. It's more tolerant of all religions. That's why it prospered, and more trade because of more scholars, and yeah, and architecture. So you know the Taj Mahal, the famous Taj Mahal for India. That was during the Mughal Empire's reign in India. So key things to remember.
Yep, and just about the Ottomans, just like Jed said, it's a great thing to know that the Ottomans were Sunni and the Safavids were Shia, because especially with the Safavids, they were almost like a Shia haven. And so when Shia Islamists came and the monks from there, the priests from Shia Islam came, they all settled in Iran. And even to this day, Iran is a great capital of Shia Islam, especially with people who live there. And the Ottomans just know they valued gunpowder probably more than all three of these empires. They carried gunpowder all the way to the 18th century, and they just used things like Christian janissaries. They took their Christian people and they converted them into Sunni Islam, and they gave them guns to kind of defend their empire. And they were also, just like the Mughals, very, very religiously tolerant. Just know all three of these empires, except for the Safavids, were very, very tolerant to an extent. All right, any more questions? That was a great question.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, so the Safavids and Ottomans basically created the Shia-Sunni conflict by using these traditions to mobilize followers. So I'd say, as I stated, the Ottoman Empire wasn't actually very, very protective of their religion. It was just they wanted to use religion as a guise for kind of attacking the Safavids. So they just hated the Safavids. They wanted their land. So they used religion as a kind of means to do so, just like the Crusades happened.
Yeah, it's a good continuity throughout history. You can see people using religion or any other thing to justify their ambition for power and authority. So you'll see that throughout history.
Quite often. Yep. All right. Any more questions whatsoever, you guys? Yeah, and one more thing about gunpowder empires, they're land-based and all their trades mostly land-based. So the Ottomans, Safavids, and Mughals did most of their trade through land. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, yeah, we can get back to our slideshow and finish it up.